Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex over at Laser Everything, and this is the second part to the complete photo engraving guide. And today we have marked a ton of different sample images on a ton of different materials. We've got some bamboo, brass, we've got stainless, we've got some ash wood, we've got anodized aluminum business cards. So we're going to actually run through the entire process for marking these, no problem. So if you are interested in seeing how we made some of these kind of sample images, stick around because we're going to go through it step by step. If you haven't already seen it, we're going to kind of burn through things really quickly in this episode. If you need more background, you want more of like the technical info, how this works, why it works, the process for testing different resolutions for different materials and lenses, go watch the first part of this episode first. There's a part 1 to this where we really do a deep dive into the technical aspects of how this all works. And how to get to where you need to be in order to start this part of the process. So if you haven't already checked that out, please go watch that video first. I will throw a link down in the description to part 1 so that you can give that a watch before tackling the stuff in this episode. Once you're all caught up on that, swing back here because we're going to mark all of this stuff and I'm going to show you how to do everything we need to do. So don't go anywhere because we're getting started right now. So here is our first project for this episode. It's a bamboo cutting board, and the reason we're starting this first is because this is the thing that's going on the diode, so I want it in the background running while we're recording everything else because it's going to take a long time. So let's hop onto the computer here and take a look at what we need to do to get a photo on this thing. So here we are in Lightburn, guys, and there is one main feature of Lightburn that I want to show you while we're getting this ready. So I have some settings picked out here. These settings work pretty well for bamboo. It's 1000 speed, 30 power. We're just on the LaserMaster 2 Pro here. But if we select our image and we click adjust, you'll see I have my DPI at 600. That's clearly not right. We're in grayscale mode. We don't have any adjustments made. One cool thing. So during the episode, I mentioned that, for every material and every lens and every different kind of laser, you need to know what DPI, for that assortment of things. Like each set of those 3 variables is going to have a different DPI. Well, it's pretty cool because in Lightburn, in the library here, we've got L Bamboo photo and then a photo setting. If I go ahead and assign this to our image layer here and then we right click and we adjust image again, it actually saves everything. Literally everything. So our dither pattern, Jarvis there, our DPI 276.1, it's really 276, but interval forces the DPI to round. So our resolution there is saved. If we had any gamma adjustments, those would be included in that as well. And it's basically ready to go. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out the first episode. I know I've already mentioned it, but the first episode we talk about how to find the DPI or resolution that you want to run your photos at for a particular material. But anyway, I just wanted to show you that. So you don't actually have to have like some weird secondary, spreadsheet somewhere if you have Lightburn. And in this case, we're on the diode, so we have access to Lightburn here. The Lightburn library will actually keep track of these when you're applying a setting to an image. So I just wanted to share that. I think that's really, really cool. As far as our width and height go, we're at about 100 by 100. And I'm not going to position this in any particularly fancy way on the cutting board. I'm not really trying to make it super awesome. That's not really what the video is about. I did go ahead and remove the background from this photo. Again, kind of outside of the scope of this video, but that was kind of my prep there. I just wanted a nice kind of like outline around us so that it was just me and Coraline. So we'll go ahead and get this set up. But really there's not a lot to do here. I mean, once we've come into adjust image, and we'll set these a little more manually in coming projects, but You know, once we have that DPI and we've selected a dither mode, I mean, it's basically done. And that's part of what makes Lightburn so great. We're going to get into EasyCAD and Photoshop with some of our follow-up projects. So, you know, we'll take the hard road here in a few minutes, but that's really all there is to it. Once you have some good settings, that's all you have to do. So let's go ahead and get this run real quick. So again, I'm not trying to make this particularly pretty. You know, we're not going to be like centering or anything like that. I just want to show you guys that it can be done. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this cutting board into the diode real quick. And I've tested my focus in advance, so we can head back over to the desktop and let's go ahead over to the Move tab. And let's go ahead over to the Move tab. We'll set origin and finish position, and we can frame this real quick. Let's make sure we switch over to user origin, starting in that bottom left corner. And the reason why is because we can see here that the laser is in the bottom left corner, right? So we don't have like a limit error or anything like that. So we'll start in the bottom left corner. We'll go ahead and hold shift and click frame here so that we can frame this out and see what it looks like. If you don't know, holding shift when clicking frame with a diode laser will fire it, which works really well, but you have to have this fire button enabled. That's up here in the settings, laser on when framing and enable laser fire button. So you have to have both of those two things turned on, and then if you hold shift and click frame, it'll actually frame out for you. So here it is. We'll go ahead and hold shift and click frame, and that'll give us a nice laser preview there, so we can see that that's actually gonna go in a nice spot. And we'll go ahead and hit start. And of course the diode is painfully slow, so we're going to let this go for a little bit and work on some other things on the fiber laser, and then we'll come back and check on this in a little bit. So if you watched the first episode, you remember we did this Tron engraving, and this came out really cool. I've got a fresh aluminum business card over here, and I just wanted to walk you guys through how to get the closest results to the Lightburn one with EasyCAD and Photoshop. So we're going to do the whole thing from scratch, and we'll go ahead and knock that out on the fiber so that you guys can see exactly how it's done every step of the way. So let's jump over to Photoshop first, because we're going to have to prep our image. So here we are in Photoshop, and the first thing we're going to do is create a new file. And the reason I'm doing this is because I know the dimensions of the aluminum business card I want to mark, so I want to make sure that things are cropped well so that the image is just going in the area where we want it to go. We're going to pick millimeters, and this is going to be a portrait, so it's going to be 54 wide by 86 tall, if I recall correctly. And again, using the method that we talked about in the first episode, if you haven't seen it, seriously, go watch it. We're going to go ahead and set our resolution to 335. That's what we determined for the fiber laser with the 110 lens on the aluminum business cards, 335. And we will hit create. So here it is. So this is our kind of our working area, and now we need to open our file explorer and find the image that we are looking for. So we'll just bring this over here, and here it is. This is the original download from Google, so we'll go ahead and drop that in. And as you can see, the proportions aren't quite right, but we do have some space on the left and the right that we can crop out. So we'll go ahead and resize that and just get her to fill the frame there. And that's pretty much all we need to do there as far as just kind of sizing and positioning. I like how this looks. So the next thing we need to do is come to image, mode, and we're going to go to grayscale because this has a bunch of color in it. We need to get rid of that color in order to use bitmap. See, I can't click it here. We need to go to grayscale first. So we'll flatten and discard our color information. That's fine. And next we can come to image, and the next thing we have to do is invert this. And the reason why is because right now anything that's black is going to get marked by the laser, and when we mark an aluminum business card it turns white. So we're actually adding brightness to this image, so we need to mark the lightest bits of this photo, not the darkest bits. So we're going to come in and image adjustments, invert. So now the parts of this image that are the brightest are the parts that are black. And so we will be marking the appropriate areas with our laser now. Lastly, if we come in here and we go to mode, bitmap, we bitmap this, we can no longer make adjustments to our curves or our gamma, so we can't push these further apart. Now, since we're doing this on EasyCAD, we do not have access to the dot width adjustment. So we really need to, bump the gamma a little bit here to get these black pixels a little further apart, because as it stands right now in these 50% gray areas, they're just too close, and those pilled ends for each of these dark lines are going to overlap, especially in this area over here. Some of these areas in like the shoulder, and in the face, all of it. So we really need to do a gamma adjustment first. So let's back off of that. Let's Control Z to undo. So we're back to just our normal grayscale, and we're going to come into image adjustments, and exposure is where they're hiding the gamma. So we'll click exposure, and we just need to make sure we're going the right direction, right? We don't want to bring those black dots closer together. That's essentially what raising the gamma is doing right now. So we're going to lower it, and how much are we going to lower it? I don't know. It really depends, and you kind of get a feel for it after a while. I don't have a specific formula for you. This image I like around 1.7 to 2 is kind of like the sweet spot on this one. You don't want to lose the detail, right? So if we pump this all the way up, like there are areas where there's literally just like nothing and the whites are blown out, that's way too much. We just want to kind of space those blacks out while maintaining as much of the detail as possible. So something around like right here is going to be really good. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. Image, mode, and bitmap again. And now that we're actually doing this for real, let's just talk about this. Resolution, we have an input of 335 pixels per inch, and that's because we set our image size, we set our resolution earlier. So that's what this is showing, is the actual current resolution of the image, 335. We want to make sure the output matches that, so 335, great. And method, diffusion dither. Here it is, and we can hit OK. I can also take just a minute to show you guys some of the extra dithering options that we get from that Z-Magic filter. So here it is. So here's Z-Magic, the Z Gray dither. I haven't activated my license on this one yet, so it's just a short countdown. And once it's open, we can actually pan around the image to check different areas. So we're going to pick this kind of like gray tone area here, because this is going to be the most difficult area to work with. And by default, it's using a threshold pattern, which is a very basic, like it's either black or it's not. There's really no shading or dithering going on there, so that's not going to work. But there are a ton of different patterns that we can choose from in here, like the 8x8 Bayer. So if we calculate that, you can see it's a very ordered pattern that it's using to shade these. Typically these look unnatural, so I don't love using them unless I'm going for something stylistically. We don't really want patterns in general, so we're going to uncheck that, and we're going to check error dithering. It's just a little more random. And if we come in here to array, here are all of the options you're used to seeing, like Jarvis or Stucky or Sierra. So you can mess around with these. Here's the Jarvis one. We can calculate the preview again. And this looks familiar because this is what we've been using more or less the entire time. I actually like the Jarvis algorithm from Z-Magic a little bit more than the default one. I'm not sure what about it. It just has a little bit more of a pleasing grain to it. So if you hit OK, it's going to generate that bitmap for you. And then this is a bitmap image, so you're good to go. You don't really have to do much else to this here except save it. Make sure when you save, so we'll come up here, file, save as. Make sure when you save, you are saving this as a bitmap. That's going to make sure that EasyCAD can read this correctly. We'll call it Cora, that's the character's name, 335, so that we know the resolution that we built this bitmap as. We'll just save it to the desktop. So once that's done, we can pop EasyCAD open and we will import it and go from there. So we're in EasyCAD, and the first thing we need to do is import our bitmap. So we have our raster image. Here's the vector import. Here's the raster import. So we'll import the raster, and here is our... actually, this is one from another video. That's downloads. I think we saved ours to the desktop. So let's make sure we use the one that we built, which is right here. And we'll go ahead and open that up. And we'll hit C to center. And there it is. So this is the bitmap that we created in Photoshop, and we can select it. And remember, we don't need to click any of the stuff over here. We just need to make sure that our disable mark low gray point is checked and set, and it is. And I've gone ahead and just popped the aluminum business card in there. These are the 0.4 millimeter ones. The 0.2s are really flimsy and warp a lot, so 0.4 is probably as low as I would go. But you can probably see the bounding box is just a little bit bigger than the card. I really like to have the edges of the photo kind of like shoot over the edge of the card, just so that there isn't like a hard line or border. We really want to fill that usable space, but neither here nor there. So anyway, back over on the desktop, with that done, we just need to pick some settings. So we'll uncheck this here. Speed, I like 300 for these cards. Power, I believe I had around 30 to 35. This is on the 30 watt Mactron, by the way, with the 110 lens. Frequency, we'll leave at 25. And that should be it, guys. Like I said, we do all of our prep in Photoshop, so there's not a lot we need to do here in EasyCAD. So with that, we can go ahead and hit mark. And it's done. Watching that back, it's actually pretty funny because you can tell just how much slower the diode is than the fiber. But you know, no worries on that. We know the diode is slow. So there it is, guys. There's our final image. Let's take a closer look at it on the R6. So here it is, guys, and any difference between this and the light burn version of it would be imperceptible if you didn't know what you were looking for or didn't know there was a difference. That dither pattern that the Z-Magic gave us looks like it did great as well. Let me try to give you guys a good look here. We'll go ahead and get you zoomed in. And let me try to get it so that we're not getting a glare. There it is. Really great results right out of EasyCAD. So light burn is certainly not required. I don't want to give the impression that you need light burn to get good photos with a laser, because it's not true. You can get good photos with a laser without it. You just need to kind of know what you're doing inside Photoshop, and once you have that kind of baseline knowledge, being able to pull stuff off like this gets a whole lot easier. So there it is. That's our first photo for this video done, and I'm really happy with that. Actually, that looks really good. I'll go ahead and post these up for you so that you can see. This is just the EasyCAD version of what we were able to accomplish, right alongside the Lightburn version, so that you can see there are a few small differences, mostly due to that dot width adjustment. It does make a difference. It's not you know, it's not so subtle that there's no difference at all, but you know, still, I mean, even with the difference between the two, the EasyCAD results are perfectly acceptable. There's nothing here that I think it just looks horrible and absolutely has to go. So you can absolutely 100% get good results just using EasyCAD and Photoshop, no problem. So we've done a lot of negative images. You know, even the whole first part of the photo guide was based kind of on negative images. We focused on the Tron image a lot. I'd really like to do a positive image, and this piece of brass is going to be perfect for that. So we will throw the brass in, and let's find a photo that we can do positive. So here's an image I thought it would be pretty cool to do on the brass. It is a screenshot from a great game called Firewatch. I don't know if any of you guys are gamers out there, but Firewatch is a really cool game. I like this image because we've got a lot of details up here in the trees. We've got all the pine needles and things. We've got all the different blades of grass and shades on the rocks, and you know, higher contrast structures in the Firewatch tower there. So I think this would be really good to kind of test out this photo method to see what we can actually resolve out of this. So we'll go ahead and close this, and we can move this out of the way for a moment. Same thing, we're going to start a new file. For width here, we have a width of 70, let's say 6, I think it was 74.5, so 76 by 76 should be plenty of space, but we're talking millimeters here, so let's get that fixed. So 76 by 76 should be good. It's a square piece of brass. And for resolution, we're going to use the same 335, and we can hit create, and there it is. There's our square. Now we can go ahead and bring in our screenshot. We want to make sure we fill our square because we don't want any blank spots on the brass plate, and we'll move this over so that we get some of the more interesting and busy pieces of this image. So we've got some of the trees in there, the grass, the rocks, the clouds, and the Firewatch tower. So that looks really good. Next we can come to image mode, and again we're going to strip that color, so let's go to grayscale and we'll allow it to flatten there. And once it's grayscaled, image mode, and this time we'll just do the normal bitmap instead of the Z Magic, just so you guys can see how the diffusion dither performs. So our input and output are 335, that looks good, and we'll hit OK. And there we go, we've got our bitmap, but we did skip a step. If you can tell what it is, a lot of these black pixels are actually really close together, and that's because we did not adjust our gamma. So let's come into adjustments, exposure, and we're just going to do a little bit of a gamma correction here. Remember, we just want to push those black areas, those black pixels a little further away from one another. So I think somewhere around 1.9 looks good. We'll hit OK. And then we're going to come into image, mode, and bitmap again, and we'll hit OK, all the same settings, and that looks more appropriate. So in these medium grays, we do have a little bit more detail shining through. They have a little bit more breathing room. So let's see what details are actually going to show up. It's kind of hard to tell from the actual digital bitmap whether or not this grass will resolve. I'm really interested to see it. So let's go ahead and save this as a BMP. So we'll do File, Save As, and we'll just call this Firewatch 335, and we'll hit Save, and that'll save through. And we can come back into EasyCAD, and we're all done with Tron here, so we can get rid of that. We'll import a new image, and there's our Firewatch 350, or 335 rather, excuse me. We'll import that, C to center. We've got 75.9, that's essentially the 76 that we set it to, so we'll leave that alone. We've still got disable mark low gray point checked. I don't know what this line feed malposition does, but we don't want that, so we'll uncheck that and we'll hit OK. And last but not least, we just need to look at some of our settings. So if we come into our param library and we take a look at our settings, we do have the, let's sort by name here. We do have the brass black deep setting. This is usually a great setting, but it's very sparky and it needs a decent amount of cleaning after it's done. So I think I'm going to raise the speed just a little bit on this, or perhaps lower the power, maybe a little bit of both. Let's take this to 200, and we're going to take our power down to like 70, just because we want to get rid of, you know, any sparks. We don't want splash damage. We don't want a heat affected zone. So 200 by 70 should be decent. And a frequency of 50, I suppose we can leave. So with that done, let's go ahead and light this and get it lined up. And that's all lined up, guys, so let's hope that our settings come out right, and we'll go ahead and pull the trigger on this. Well, learning experience, guys. Sometimes you try stuff and it doesn't work out. We do not have enough contrast. It just isn't dark enough on the brass. And that's not the biggest deal in the world. Here's what it looks like. So let me see if we can go ahead and get that to focus. It just, in the right light, it's marking lighter than the base metal. You know, and in the wrong light, you can almost kind of see the image there, but there's a lot of glare. Not ideal, not what we want. So it's actually pretty easy to get a white mark on brass. I guess since we've done all this work already, we can invert the photo and we can try a white mark on the back instead, which isn't that hard to do. So let's do that real quick, just so that we're not wasting the brass piece. So we can't use this anymore, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. And we're going to come back into Photoshop and we're going to back up. So we'll Control Z there. The reason we're backing up is because the gamma is backwards, right? If we invert this, so let's just do that now, image adjustments, invert. The way we have the gamma set, it's actually pushing the marked pixels closer together, and that's not what we want. So if we come into image mode, adjustments, exposure, gamma correction, we can push the gamma correction down to get those blacks further apart, kind of like how we did with the Tron one. We're going to go a little further than usual just because we're starting from dark already. So maybe somewhere around 3. Normally I'd be, again, 1.7 to 1.9, but we're going to go to like 3 just to kind of make up for the gamma that we adjusted the other direction when it was a positive image. We'll hit OK, and we'll come in here, image mode, bitmap, and diffusion dither, and we'll hit OK. And this should work well with just like a nice white finish setting. So let's save as. We'll save over our old Firewatch and hit OK. And we'll pop back into EasyCAD here, where we will import the revised version, the inverted revised version here. We'll center that up. And last but not least, we just need to change our settings. So let's select from library. The steel white should give us a nice white finish on this brass, so we'll hit OK. And we should be good to go. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to line it up and then we're going to mark it. So apologies in advance, but I actually made another mistake. It's like 1:30 in the morning. I'm exhausted, but we actually used the slate white setting, and we should have used the steel white setting, which is why we're not getting a very bright white. So let's come down here and rectify that steel white finish, and we'll hit OK. And we're just going to run this over the slate white. It should be fine. So we're going to run that one more time, and hopefully we'll get some better results. So let's check that out. Alright, so I can already tell, I know it doesn't look like much where it is, hopefully you can see it, but I'm going to run over and grab it real quick so that you can check it out, because it's going to look a lot better than our first attempt. So here it is, guys. You know, does it have flaws? Yeah, absolutely. We definitely lost some detail in the grass down there, but I mean, I think that's pretty freaking cool, considering where we started. It looks nice. So going with the white finish on the brass was definitely the way to go. I'm super happy with that. I would definitely, obviously, sell this to a customer. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Just got to kind of, the ring lights back there, so I'm just trying to dodge the glare on that, but otherwise really, really good results. So I haven't given up on wanting to do a positive image on the fiber. I have these steel plates here. They're really thin, so this may go poorly, but I want to try to Z-mark this with a nice black Z-mark. I haven't done this before, but we do have kind of like an odd shape here, so we're going to have to think about what kind of photo we can do to actually make this work. That's going to have a lot of detail. So we'll take a look at some options, and then we'll try to Z-mark this. The thing that we're really going to have to pay attention to on a plate like this is going to actually be our dot size, because we're defocusing to do the Z-mark. The traditional Laser Everything Z-mark requires a defocus, and that increases our dot size. So we may have issues with resolution. We may need to decrease our DPI. We'll see. Again, I haven't messed with it yet, so we're going to be doing it together for the first time. So I've measured our plate here, and I got 77 wide by 26 tall with a resolution of 335. We're going to stick with our normal fiber laser resolution. If this doesn't work, we'll change it, but I'm going to try this first, and we'll hit create, and there is our box. And one of the earliest photos that I tested out while trying this method was this galaxy photo, which I think would be really cool. There's lots of blacks in there, so it should look pretty cool with the Z-mark. We're just going to go ahead and blow it up so that it takes up the boundary of our marking area right there. We've got a lot of medium shading going on in the center of the galaxy spiral, big bright area in the middle, and lots of nice dark tones out on the edges. So this should be a good test. If we come into image mode, grayscale, again, we're just going to flatten and remove the color data. This is a positive image, so no inversion is required, so we're going to leave that alone. The other thing we need to do is we need to adjust our gamma. So let's push those blacks a little further apart by dropping our gamma down here. So we're going to go ahead and drop that to, again, around 1.8-ish. I seem to be having good success with. It may be a little more. I seem to be kind of just underdoing it a little bit. Maybe 2.3. Let's try that. We'll hit OK. And last but not least, we need a dither. So image mode bitmap. Our output resolution looks good, and we're doing diffusion dither, so we'll hit OK. And there it is. So we'll see how this does, guys. Again, I've never tried to Z-mark a photo before, so I'm not exactly sure how it's going to come out. But we're going to give it a try. So let's file, save as. We'll call this Galaxy 335, and we will go ahead and save that to the desktop with our other photos that we're doing today. And we can drop that. Let's get rid of this Firewatch photo here and import, and we're going for the Galaxy. So there it is, C to center. I'm just going to double check these again. Everything looks good, and we need our Z-mark setting, so let's find that. Here it is, Z-mark black. And with that in, hopefully we don't need to change too much. Hopefully this just kind of works out. So we'll frame it, and we'll go ahead and mark it, and cross our fingers. So our Galaxy is done, and it could really use some cleaning with some like 3-in-1 oil and a toothbrush, which I don't actually have with me at the home office yet, but here it is. It looks pretty cool. This one actually looks a little better when it does catch the light, though you can kind of, orient this however you want. I like that reflection. It's almost got like a holographic look to it. This plate steel is much better for engraving text. Also, we did the off side because the good side has like an enamel over it. So we used the back side for this. I just don't love this steel for photo engraving. I don't think it's a problem with the actual bitmap generation. I think it's just the steel. It just kind of has like a brown look to it. So no worries, but still, still like relatively cool. Could it be better? Sure, absolutely it could, but it's got like a glow to it. It actually looks kind of sick, so I'm pretty happy with that. If we have time, we'll run one more on I have some steel chips. We can do a steel chip and see if we can get a better Z-mark on that, because I'm pretty sure that I have one. Also, while that was running, I wanted to show more of this while it was going, but our cutting board finished. So there is the final photo from the Diode on the bamboo cutting board. Really consistent results, actually. Very surprising. Bamboo is typically a lot more inconsistent than this, so points for the Diode on handling the bamboo there, because that looks really good. This was about 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters, and I'm stoked on that. So that looks awesome. That's really great. So moving on, we have a couple things left to do in this episode before we wrap up. I haven't been able to do a positive image of Tron yet, so I'd like to take some of this ash that we have here and do a positive Tron image, because I've only done that one negative since I've gotten started, and I'd really like to see it positive. I think the diode is a good choice for that. We can do it nice and big, and maybe we'll do that other steel one too. We'll add that in and see what we can get with that. So let's set up the diode first, since it's going to take so long to run. And we'll go ahead and get rid of this, and we will import. And here is the Tron photo right there. So we'll go ahead and drop that in. We're going to do this about 70 millimeters wide, just based on my measurements. So a good bit bigger than the original one that we did on the card. I might even push this to 80, honestly. We have the time. Let's go big with it. And if we come into the adjust image, we can see that things are right where we left them, which is good, because I was happy with the results that we got on the cutting board. So we'll leave all of that, and let's come into our cuts and layers and just make sure nothing has changed with our dot width correction, and it hasn't. So that looks good too. So all we need to do is drop the wood in and get this one going, and then we can focus on getting that Z mark on the steel. So I've got that nice and set up in the corner. We do just want to make sure that we switch this to user origin. I ended up running the cutting board on absolute origin, so whoops. But we'll start this one in the bottom left corner. Let's make sure we set origin and set the finish position to that bottom left corner where we have things lined up, and we can go ahead and hit start. Hopefully these settings aren't too harsh for the ash. I haven't tested this in advance. Again, we're just kind of doing our best here, so we'll see how that goes. But for now, we can go ahead and minimize this, and we will leave the piece of ash wood there to run. So it's going right now. It's looking pretty good. It looks like we're out of focus. So I went ahead and refocused our diode there. I did not think about how the cutting board was way thicker than our piece of ash. So this should pick up right where we paused it, and we should see some pretty good results. So once again, we will check on this in a little bit. So I have some really thick steel chips here. If this doesn't give us a good black mark photo, I'm not sure anything will. But we are going to do a little bit of special prep just to make sure that we get some nice detail on such a small piece of steel. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. So as kind of usual here, we are in Photoshop, and we're going to create a new file. We're going to select millimeters, and this chip is a 53 millimeter square, so we'll go ahead and type in 53 by 53. We're going to stick with our 335, but I think we're just going to take it down just a little bit. So we're going to come down to just like 330, and we'll hit create. And once we have our workspace here, and we're feeling good about our setup, we can bring in our file. I would like to do the Tron photo again. I think this would look really good positive with the Z mark. So let's blow it up fairly large to fill the square as much as possible. I want to try to get some of this detail and see how we can get this to look with the black mark. So we're pushing boundaries here, guys, but there it is. There's still plenty of detail. It's not quite pixelated enough yet where I'm nervous about how this is going to come out. And we're going to come into image mode grayscale, just as we've been doing, and we're also going to want to adjust that gamma. So let's go ahead and pull that down and brighten that up. Somewhere around 2 looks good. And image mode bitmap at 330. That's our new resolution that we set with the diffusion dither, and there it is. So let's see what we can do with this, guys. So let's go ahead and save this as a bitmap. We'll call it Quora 330, and we'll save. And let's get it open in EasyCAD and see what we can do. So import. Let's find that new one, Quora 330, open, center, and light. So I've gone ahead and just stopped it here because I want to inspect what we've done so far and just make sure we're getting that nice black Z mark before we let this thing go crazy. So let me go take a look at that. And after inspecting it up close, I think that the dot is just moving too quickly. Because it's only marking little pixels and it's not moving across the entire scan line at the speed that we set, I think it just doesn't have enough time to get hot enough to get black. So we can do a little bit about that here. We can go ahead and turn the power up. I'm going to add 20 points of power. We're going to take it up to 55. And we can also slow the speed down a little bit. So maybe just something like 40. So let's try these settings instead and see what we can do with this. Alright guys, so I stopped recording around 1:30 because I was struggling with getting an image on these steel plates, and it is now 4 a.m. and after failure after failure after failure, I started to get frustrated. I was trying a bunch of different stuff. I think that there's probably better settings than what we ended up landing on, but I think this is pretty cool. Let me see if I can even get it to show up. It's got a pretty specific viewing angle, but you can kind of see it there. Anyway, it's kind of where I landed. So there's one of them, and then there were some stops along the way, like here where we were trying some ablation instead, which actually doesn't look too bad if you get it in the right light. Probably one of the easier ones to see. And a bunch of samples and tests over here. Again, not horrible. There's probably something there, maybe towards the bottom, but anyway, I spent a long time on that. So, you know, stainless, difficult. We need to work on Z-mark settings. They're not quite where I want them to be yet. Dot width adjustment in Lightroom would probably help with this big time. This looks really pretty good if you can get it without the glare. I know it's pretty glary, but I'm fairly happy with that. It's just a little bit dark. And then the ashwood, which we started on the diode. An interesting look. It's got, you know, it's unique for sure. The big problem with the ashwood, of course, is the grain pattern on here. Wherever it's darkest, it really absorbs much more energy than it does in the lighter areas. So it would have been nice to get perfect results on these last couple projects, because we really did get nice results on the other things that we worked on today. But you know, I really just wanted to show the process, start giving you the building blocks so that you can experiment and try these things on your own too. So I hope this episode helped you out with that. We're going to come back to the stainless square and the ashwood in just a minute, but first Kyle actually recorded himself doing a really big piece of plywood, so I'm going to let Kyle take it away here for a second so he can show you what he was working on.
Hey guys, Kyle here, tagging in with Alex, and I'm going to be doing a CO2 laser engrave, doing a photo on 1/4" birch plywood. Now, just to touch on this, if you haven't done the gradient testing, I'd encourage you to go back and follow those steps and do that first, because that's going to help you get a great engrave, and that's going to help you with your line spacing and DPI. It's going to change for every laser. If your focal length changes, if your lens is different tube sizes are going to generate different beam sizes. All kinds of differences. Just go back and do the testing. It's totally worth it. Now, let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so we're here in Lightburn, and we need to go ahead and prep our artwork before we move over to the laser engraver. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop my image here onto the work area of Lightburn. We're going to go ahead and size that for where we want it to be. And we're going to rotate it in this case, since it needs to fit in our engrave area of our laser. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little extra step. And I want to go ahead and make a border around my image so that I have a nice cut area because my plywood's a little oversized. Now what we're going to do is we're going to align it vertically and horizontally, and we have a nice cut line here. Now that's going to fit nicely. Now to proceed with the steps, we're going to go ahead and adjust image. We're going to make sure that the dither is set, our DPI is set, and with the DPI is our line interval. And if we're going to adjust the gamma, we should do that now. In my case, I'm going to leave it as is. We're going to click OK. And we're going to go up here to the cuts and layers, and we're going to double click on our image layer. And it's going to pull up the cut settings editor. And what we want to do is we want to make sure dot width correction is turned on, and it's set to where we need it to be. We're going to click OK. And I want to make sure that both the speed, power, and my cut line are set, and we're all set there. So all we have left to do now is send it over to the laser, and we'll see you when we're done. Alright guys, so we're back from our engrave, and I think it came out absolutely gorgeous. Check that out. Beautiful contrast. This is great. You want to see the big one, huh? One sec. Check that out. It's hard to get a great angle, but isn't that absolutely awesome? Now, with that, thanks Alex for sharing with us, and thank you all for watching. Back to Alex.
And that's it, guys. That's everything I've got for today. Thank you so much for watching this episode. If you got value out of it, don't forget to smash the like button. Let everybody else know the content was good. I hope that being able to walk through the process with me kind of gets you going in the right direction and gives you the boost that you need to start experimenting with photos on your own. I wanted to include this in the main episode, but it's just too long, so we had to break it off and kind of have it as its own separate thing. Still, there's a lot more to unpack here, obviously. We could dive into different dither patterns, different techniques, different materials, all stuff that I plan on doing in the coming weeks or months. We'll see. We've got a lot of stuff that we still need to record and get going, but you know, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you love the channel and you want to continue to see new episodes, take a second to consider signing up for the Laser Master Academy. It's the #1 way to support the channel, and it helps me continue to do this full time. Every episode that we air on the channel for everybody for free is thanks to our amazing Laser Master Academy members. So if you'd like to check that out, head over to masters.lasereverything.net. And if you're confused about what exactly it is we're doing in this episode, go watch the first part. I'll throw a card up in the corner for you so that you guys can check that out. We dive into the technical aspects of how this all works, and it makes the photo engraving process make a lot more sense once you have that kind of technical background. So go ahead and check that out as well. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got. We got to engrave a lot of really cool stuff today, and you know we're going to be back really soon with another episode for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.